All right, sorry, so we'll start again. So good evening. My name is Dan Gordon from Flash Fire. In case you couldn't read lips for the last minute or two, thank you to those that gave me a shout out. So tonight's our last class for the year, our last free online class. They've gone very well, I think. I've certainly appreciated or enjoyed doing them, and the feedback has been pretty positive. So I'm looking forward to definitely doing them again next year for those of you that are asking. I certainly want to do, different topics. We're not going to do the same ones. Yeah, it's been great. Thank you for those that have, a lot of the same names each time. So that's awesome. So VES is obviously the last one that we're doing tonight. And I have some notes on how, things I want to cover, but as always, if anyone has questions or comments or wants to, give feedback, I certainly don't want to be the one talking all night, although I'm certainly, that's kind of what I went into it thinking of doing. But if anyone has anything else that they want to add in, please feel free, especially experiences, positive, negative, things like that. The other thing that I have tonight that I'm really excited to roll out with you guys is two members are on, or two or three guys are on here that have, not that they're the only ones that have done VES, but that have done VES at an incident in a suburban or rural type department. And so we'll actually give them an opportunity to talk about their experiences doing it, how it went, what went well, what didn't, all of that stuff that you normally do in a critique, if you will. So that'll be good. Those are from South Windsor and Watertown. So one, I would consider them both successful VES operations. One, primaries came up negative, and the other involved a successful rescue. So we'll certainly get into those, as we get into the evening. So thank you all for joining me. Like I said, we have the chat window. So if anyone has any questions, comments that they want to put in, the chat window is a nice, easy way to do it. Since I'm the one talking and looking at the chat window, I might not see it right away, but I certainly, will get to it. So without further ado, so basically the way I'm going to run this is I'm going to go through, and I have notes here, but I'm not going to put a PowerPoint up or anything like that. And what I want to do is I'm going to go through VES, a little bit of the background of it, and then we'll get into those presentations, if you will, by the guys that have done it. And then we'll get more into the meat and potatoes of VES, some of the things that I see with it, why to do it, why not to do it, how to do it, some of those things. And then I have some simulations up. I didn't make them specially for tonight. They're ones that we've used in past classes. So we'll go through a couple of those and just some of the things that I see, maybe where we would VES, where we wouldn't VES, things like that. And then I'm going to close out the evening talking about what we're trying to do with Flash Fire for VES and what we kind of see as, I don't want to say the future, but what we want to be able to bring to the table in terms of VES training. So I kind of tried to Google the history of VES, and there's not a, you Google the history of a Halligan and there's 10 different web pages that come up. I didn't really see that with VES. Actually, a couple guys on here I'm in a group text with, I found an article from, I don't know, 9 years ago or so of someone saying why we should never VES, and it's the most dangerous thing in the world, and it's absolute last resort. And, I think if it's something you don't train on, or it's something that you're not familiar with, just like anything, you're probably not going to gravitate towards it being a tactic in your toolbox, if you will. So, while I certainly disagree with pretty much everything he put in that article, if it's something you've never experienced before, I could understand why you might have that kind of mindset. So like I said, there's not really anything I found. If someone has something out there, please share it. But there was nothing I found that's like, this is why VES started. So I kind of put together my 2 cents on what the history is of VES. And I think the bottom line, as with many things in the fire service, transitional attack probably being the biggest one. It was probably done well before it was ever called VES, right? If you saw someone at a window, I'm sure a firefighter 50, 60, 100 years ago would have gone up to that window and gotten the person out. If someone said, my kid is in that bedroom, they would have gotten up to that window, entered the room, done a search, and rescued the kid. And it was never actually called, VES or had a name to it, if you will. Certainly, I would say, to the best of my knowledge, the VES being like part of the everyday cycle probably became very prevalent in New York City with the OVM, or outside vent man. And, where his job was to basically vent, the fire area, and then, enter and be able to do a search if possible. And in New York City, a lot of it comes down to fire escapes, because that was the bread and butter of what a lot of the buildings were. Obviously, there's a ton of private dwellings as well. But when you look at the, warriors, if you will, a lot of those buildings were tenements. And a lot of those buildings were tenements, so they had fire escapes. And I think that probably plays a big part. Again, not that that's the original VES, but I think that that's where it's kind of become a little more commonplace and whatnot. We have a history nerd here that says James Braidwood mentioned VES type operations in the 1800s. So kudos to Dan for that. That's awesome. So that's kind of my thought on some of the stuff with VES. That a lot of it had to do with fire escapes, and again, you're going to find someone at a window, you're going to go get them. So where has VES progressed? Why is it something that maybe we care about? Why is it something that I would say, at least from my perspective, that there has been a resurgence of it in the last 10, 15 years. And again, it was something that a lot of people knew, and it was taught. But I think in the last 10, 15 years, it's really become something that is a lot more commonplace. Certainly in certain areas of the country, or certain instructors. And so why should we care? Obviously, we had 42 people sign in tonight so far. So why should we care about VES? I think I'm going to break it down a little bit, in a little more detail later. But I think a lot of what happens with VES is you kind of have two categories that comes into play when you deal with it. One of them being, the known victim, meaning you have someone, either you see them in a window, or you have, a mother saying, my kid's trapped in that bedroom, or, a known life hazard like that. And the most obvious thing to do is go get them. And when you have a known location, you can target that window. You don't have to try to find that room from the inside. And so I think in that sense, VES makes sense, because, and again, like I said, even if you're a department that says we do not do VES, if you show up at a fire and you see someone hanging out of a window, you're going to throw a ladder to that window and go get them. So inherently, even if you don't call it VES, you're kind of doing VES at that point. So I think that plays a part, the known life hazard and the known location of the building. And then it's an alternate option to search, in a lot of buildings, lightweight being one. You may have premature collapse of other areas of the house. You may not have the ability to find the stairs to the second floor. So some of those factors, I think, play into it when it comes to, VES in a private dwelling. In multiple dwellings, a lot of these apartments are smaller. And so even a small fire in a small apartment is going to block the main path of entrance and access egress. So VES may be the only option to get into some of those rear bedrooms and whatnot. And even a smaller private dwelling, if you had a decent fire on the first floor, your stairs may be blocked. Hoarding conditions may not allow you to get past the engine company to get up to the second floor. And so then VES becomes an option. So I think there's a lot that plays into it. And I don't think that there's a lot of departments that have the manpower or the ability to kind of have VES be an automatic tactic every day. But I think every department should have VES be certainly an option that they can do if they have, the need to do it. But I think targeting the known life hazard, not just known like, okay, we have a victim, but known we have a location, I think is very important. So, I think that's some of the things that come into play with VES in that sense. Let's go to the next one. All right. So I'm being photobombed here. So we're going to do one thing with the acronyms. and then we're going to get into the presentation tonight of some of the other, like I said, the South Windsor and Watertown guys. So VES is obviously the thing everyone knows. They've heard it. Vent Enter Search for those that have heard it but don't actually know what the acronym is. And in the end, there's a few different acronyms. I only know two of them, but they all mean the same thing. So VEIS has become the new one in the last 5-6 years. As I get into what I'm doing with my classes, I'm calling my classes a VES class. I'm not kowtowing to VEIS. That said, for those of you listening at home, we're teaching the same thing, right? It's always been vent, enter, isolate, and search. I'm just not including that in the acronyms because I don't think it's necessary, and I like to do my own thing. So I like to keep VES. That's how I was taught. And again, if we were changing something and now we were isolating the door and we never used to, then that's a different story. But like I said, we're doing the same thing. And then I heard something the other day about OVEIS, because apparently the O stands for open. And we actually have to teach that if you're going to enter a room, you have to open the window first. So again, I'm not doing that. VES is what I know. And even people that teach OVEIS, VEIS, whatever the case is, they're all teaching the same thing. When you get into the meat and potatoes, there's not a ton of wiggle room into how you VES. Maybe there's a couple nuances about how you enter the window, where you put your tools, things like that. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But in the end, like I say, it's really all the same thing. And what's really the same thing is, in the end, we're all firemen. If we get there and someone's hanging out of a window, we are going to get them. So in the end, it doesn't even really matter, what you call it in that sense as well. So, so I don't know if there are any questions so far, but what I'd like to do is we'll start out with a couple of our quote unquote presenters, if you will. So I have Dan Katzbeck from South Windsor Fire Department, and I'm going to pull up, I have a very nice written kind of narrative on the incident. So I'm going to read that out, and then I'll share the screen so everyone can see it. Let me just get this set up. Screen 2. All right, so you guys should be able to see the screen, a Word document. And we also have, I think he's still here, Tim Papp, who was, I don't know if he was the incident commander or just a chief on scene, but he's an assistant chief up there, or deputy chief up there as well in South Windsor. So we'll read through this. Dan, can you hear us? Or can you?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hear you as well. So I'll just read through this, and then we'll get into that. So this was a couple of years ago. So 8:30 in the evening, 11 Pam Lane, 1st Do Company, Engine 6 and Rescue 5. Tim Papp was on scene to a well-involved split level. Because we've addressed this in past classes, what I will mention is that, just to make sure everyone's on the same page with what a split level is with what we're talking about. So we have one level here, and that is where the main door is right there. And then so you walk in there and you have half a flight of stairs up and half a flight of stairs down. So main issues with a split level would be that those stairs generally have no doors at the top or the bottom. So not just, fires, but anything can spread up those stairs without any ability to control that at all. So that certainly makes it a big issue, especially on the life safety side. So they had an electrical service down across the street in the front yard, blocking access to the front of the building right out of the gate there. That's kind of a tough thing to deal with. So you got a map here. If I remember his explanation, this is Pam Lane. It's a dead end. So the main entrance and driveway is there, but we had power lines down, and knowing that that the wires were there, and the rescue obviously doesn't carry water, the rescue parked here on the main road and walked in through the yard in the backyard, which is obviously a heads up move in that case. So they had 4 guys. Chief Papp got indication from the neighbors that the homeowner is still inside, and assigns you guys to VES. So you guys were first due, Dan, in front of Engine 6?
Yeah, we were. We left right before him.
So you guys got there first. You guys walked through the yards to get there. This is the back of the house. This is well, these are the same view, I assume, right? And this one's just on
Correct.
fire.
Yep.
You know, I can read this, or you can just kind of tell us. So you got a report. Were you the officer, or you were in the back?
No, I'm the captain of the rescue, so I was up front.
Okay, so you're up front. You get a report from Tim that neighbors are reporting someone still in the house. You got 4 guys. So did all 4 of you go up? How did you divide the crews, things like that?
Yeah, so we're fortunate the heavy rescue, we carry a 14-foot roof ladder. So when we beached it on that side street and cut through the yard, the picture on the lower right was actually conditions that we saw as we were cutting through. So all 4 of us went to size up the rear of the house, knowing from Chief Papp's size up that power lines were down. So the A side was not an option, especially that early on. So when we came around the rear, there's really only one room that wasn't on fire, and that was in that CD corner. And it's really tough to tell in that picture on the left, but unlike any of the traditional training that we've done VES, we had a nice little deck that was there. It wasn't accessible with any stairs. So what I said earlier, we're fortunate we had that roof ladder, right? So all 4 of us came off the rig, ready to go to work, laddered that porch, and didn't have to even force entry because there's no stairs. I don't think they ever bothered to lock that slider door that was up there. So entered the slider with 2, myself and another fireman. I had the camera. I think the difference again that we had the benefit of is some semi-hoarding conditions in that bedroom gave us the ability to clear out that room a little bit as we searched. We were able to take some of the contents out and just throw it outside on that little deck. You know, opportunities that we wouldn't have gotten in other rooms, or if we had to go through the window as we traditionally trained for. So the door was already closed. All the bedrooms doors were closed, which I don't know how many times that actually happens, but I can tell you from being in those conditions, we actually did think there was a survivability factor. So that you know, gave us some purpose for what we were doing in that room. And the difficult part was obviously the Chief Papp couldn't see the rear of the building where we were operating. We couldn't see what his vantage point was from the front of the building. So we probably, you know, all said, it wasn't a very big house to begin with, you know, so that master bedroom was probably 10 by 12. We might have been in there for 2 minutes or less before Chief thought conditions were deteriorating too quickly and pulled us all out. So we searched that room and then came out, you know, on the orders, came around the D side and noticed from that picture below that obviously, you know, there's still a couple of bedrooms on the A side that we had the opportunity to get in and do a quick search. So the A side, especially the bedroom closest to the D corner over there, we were ordered out of the building. So this was one of those, it was an improvised search. We bellied down in the sill and used the hook and the camera to check as much as we could. And again, even those bedrooms, you know, at best they were probably 10 by 10. And then the bedroom that you see there, the second one that we moved over to as one of the guys was going to bill in there to check, actually got radio confirmation that the homeowners arrived on scene and nobody was in there.
So at that point, you guys got pulled out and you went about firefighting strictly or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think, you know, someone mentioned a good point here too, that, you know, listen, I'm not going to sit here and beat up on cops because there's probably a couple here, but I think you know, how often do we hear PD on scene reporting fully involved, right? And if this is what they see, I mean, I'm guaranteeing anyone's, even homeowners or neighbors, they're going to report this as fully involved, right? And it's well involved, don't get me wrong, but you guys certainly got in and found survivable space in there, right?
Yeah, benefit that all 3 of those bedroom doors were closed, which I think is pretty rare. But certainly, obviously, it held that fire back long enough to be able to check those spaces.
Yeah. So what after you took the window, and we'll use, this picture as a good barometer for questions, just so that people can kind of see what the exterior conditions were at the time. When you took the window, uh, well, you took it with the tool, you did not take it with the ladder, correct?
Correct, correct.
You were on air when you took it?
Yes.
Okay, and what were the conditions when you took the window?
Yeah, like I said, with that door closed, the box inside of that bedroom was really just lights out conditions and heat.
Okay,
Uh, and again, even to that extent of that room in the front there, we really all felt that those were survivable conditions if there was somebody in there.
yeah, and were you guys able to confirm, obviously there was, but there was a lot of stuff in there too, right? If I remember,
There was.
yeah,
There,
so,
there was, yeah, especially in the master bedroom, which obviously would slowed down some progress. But that
yeah,
back bedroom with that porch again was a little bit different, right, than we normally train through going through a window. In
yeah.
terms of it gave us some space to work with.
So were you able to really get a good sound of the floor to make sure that it was there? Or when you sounded it, was it kind of just like hitting stuff that they had piled on the floor and stuff like that? How sure were you when you were climbing in there that it was a solid floor below you?
Yeah, we were confident enough.
Okay, cool. And so because the door was closed, you just started your search as soon as you got in there?
Correct.
Okay. And so you didn't find anybody, which is good, because no one was in there. Um, what else? Anything else you can think of with I mean,
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
good.
my takeaway, I guess, we've trained on this. I've listened to people who have done it before. Um, we've had some acquired structures where we've trained on it, and at some point you think that might be a task that you're never going to do. And the takeaway I had from it was obviously that complacency or never being, and the fact that it had a really strong crew on that rescue. When we parked that thing, obviously don't know what time, right? But we were off that piece, ready to go with work, and inside that house, searching, quickly under
Yeah.
those conditions. There was no hesitation of the guys and the crew about getting up that ladder and getting in there. And then most importantly, the takeaway was kind of, if those doors are closed under those conditions that we had, because that house really it was at least 80% involved. The only things that weren't going were the bedrooms with the doors closed. So,
Yeah.
that's absolutely, to me, I thought this was like the case of VES, right? If you're not going to search that, what aren't you going to search? I mean, while everything else is going, those bedrooms were available to us.
It's the case for VES, both in that regards, and also why, I mean, there's your front door. That VES was your only option. There was no other way to search those bedrooms other than entering those windows. Whatever you want to call it, I don't care. But you are not getting into that house in any other way other than through the windows.
Yep.
So was it, did you leave a guy on the ladder as an orientation guy, or were both people inside? How did you break up your crew? Were all four of you together the entire time?
No, so two outside, and then one on the ladder. When we had the benefit of that porch in the back of the house, there was two of us inside and then two
Okay.
outside. Yeah.
So the one guy on the ladder, who had the camera? Was it the person on the ladder, the person inside?
Person on the ladder.
Okay. And you had told me that the camera wasn't that helpful for you guys, right?
Yeah, but so I think that was a training for me, right? I think I had it in fire mode. So like that first room that we went into, yeah, with the heat level, it whited out.
Well, I don't know that it was a mode. I think there's definitely a possibility too that there was so much stuff in there that it was all relatively around the same temperatures, and maybe just wasn't giving you a good contrast. And so, we talk about it a lot when you have, I don't care if you have flashover conditions or you're in a freezer, if everything's the same temperature, you're not going to get a good image. So it's not about heat, it's not about cool, it's about differentiation in temperatures. And so if everything in there was one temperature or close to the same temperature, you're not going to get a good image. And if it was all stuff that was the same type of stuff, meaning all clothes, all stuff like that, all things that the technical term would be have the same emissivity value, then it's all absorbing and reflecting heat at the same rate. And so even if there's heat in there, it's all absorbing it at the same amount, and then therefore not giving you that true contrast. And so in that case, the camera might have helped more if the door was opened, because you would have gotten that contrast. Obviously, the first thing we're going to do is close the door anyway. But I don't know that the camera is the best tool for a search in a small room like that. I think if that door was open, then scanning that room to find where the door is and is fire rolling into the room, I think that it's phenomenal for that. Now, were you the one with the camera?
Yeah, I was.
Were you at least able to keep an eye on where the searching firefighter was?
Yep.
So I think that's the biggest tool for it. I would not get down on the camera or training or anything. Fair point. I sell them the cameras, so that's biased. But I wouldn't get down on the camera because you weren't able to really get a good view of the room. If you were able to account for your members, then I think it's doing its job. I think I think that's the most important thing for you, is to find the door if it's open and then close it, which that took care of itself, and then account for your member that's in there. So if you don't have contrast, you're not going to get a good image. It doesn't matter what the temperature is around it. So, but that's a great learning point and teaching point and talking point. So plus you got a lot of adrenaline going on, so who knows.
No, it's a good point, Dan. I appreciate it. We've had obviously a camera for years, and I was just thinking it was operator error. I had it in the wrong mode, and it was frustrating at the time. I was actually thinking the camera was going to be a home run, and it wasn't.
Yeah, I think there's so many reasons for search that it can speed things up. Like you could look in there and see a victim, and then by all means it's a home run. But I can think of 10,000, not 10,000. I can think of 10 reasons why there would be a victim in there that you wouldn't see. Under the bed, behind the bed, been in there a while, so they've their temperature is the same as the ambient temperature, so there's no contrast. So there's a lot of things. The other big thing with cameras is because you may very well, and obviously it's hard to tell from the picture, but if the camera itself is up in that thermal layer, which is obviously very possible when you're on a ladder like this, because you're already, I don't know, 2-3 feet up in the air, and then you're up in the window, so you're probably 5 feet up in the air. If you're into that thermal layer, a lot of times that's going to really limit what you're going to be able to see through the camera as well. So and then there's obviously it could be moisture condensation, someone mentioned that. So there's a lot of things, but in the end, I think the most important takeaway, even from the camera salesman, is you got to be ready to just do a regular search. Your cameras are going to fail. Everything you have at some point could not work, and so you need to be ready to do your basic left hand, right hand, search that I know you guys practice and get hammered on a lot. So yeah, that's awesome. The 14-foot ladder definitely helps as well in this case. Having a 12-foot would probably be, your 14-foot would probably be the I don't know, 14-foot roof ladder would probably be is that what you guys had, the 14-foot roof ladder? Or was like
yeah,
okay,
the 14. 14.
So if you go 24, it's so that probably helped. But yeah, what else? You got anything else? What other thoughts do you have on it?
Yeah, I don't have any other thoughts, Dan, except for, to me, it was a personal training experience that you couldn't duplicate other than doing it. So
absolutely. And when we get into talking about VES, after the presentations, this goes in that category of non-known location life hazard, if you will. You had a good indication that someone might be in there, but you didn't have someone there pointing at a window and saying that's the room that they're in. So you guys basically targeted the building based on where you thought you would find someone, or honestly, in this case, the only places you could target the building. You didn't have a ton of, it kind of narrowed it down for you based on where there wasn't fire blowing out of. So
yeah, this one checked all the boxes for everything that could go wrong. Wires down in that picture there, right? The house that we walked by Soon could have been an exposure. The siding was melting. That thing was starting to smoke. So you had exposure concerns. Obviously, we had an engine that would be shortly behind us, but they had other priorities as well. And then, second and third due actually to this neighborhood is quite a ways away. So you had to hustle with the 4 guys that you had to get the job done as expected.
Yeah, and I mean, to take this in a non-VES way, let's say the fire kind of stopped here and you were able to enter this front door, at some point you pretty much are sure the fire is going to end up this way. And that's why in this case, VES is the safest option. How far were you, not you, but the guy that entered, was he ever more than 10 feet away from his egress?
No.
Probably not. And he was behind a closed door. So,
Yep.
A lot of people like to talk about VES being dangerous, but in this case, it was by far and away the safest way to search that area. Are there times where it's dangerous or more dangerous than a regular search? Yeah, I'm sure there are. But I actually think overall, it's probably a safer operation, at least from the standpoint of being able to find your way out, than going in the front door, going up to the second floor, and then if you need to get out, either finding a window or coming back down to the first floor. So I know Chief Pap's here tonight. Tim, do you want to, you listened to Dan, do you want to chime in on anything that Dan said?
No, I think Dan covered a lot of it. The only thing I'll add is when I arrived on scene, obviously conditions were well advanced. A couple of cops had arrived on scene before me. One of them had done a 360 of the house. When I pulled up, there was cars in the driveway. The neighbor whose front lawn I actually parked on when I realized the power lines were down, she came out and said, I think they might be home. So the cops advised nobody met him out front. Nobody met me out front. The cars in the driveway, the neighbor's suspicion, and me looking at those front rooms, as Dan said, I didn't get a look at the rear. I could acknowledge that could be a survivable space. So that's why coming in with the rescue, knowing the equipment they carry, the crew that had on there, I assigned them to VES those rooms. Because if anybody was going to be in that house or alive, those are the rooms they were going to be in. And like Dan said, I did pull them out eventually. Was the order absolutely followed right away? No, I wouldn't expect it to be. They had a job to do. They got it done. I think they knew I was watching them. But I felt very confident in the training that we've done and the members to actually VES those spaces. So I think, like you said, it is the only way, but it's extremely safe to do this. And I think they really did. They did a fantastic job getting it done. And I was really proud of them. And thankfully, the homeowner wasn't home. But it was really, like Dan said, a lot of stuff kind of put us behind the 8 ball. But they did a phenomenal job doing what they had to do. So, but from the IC's point, I knew we had to do something. I couldn't sit out front and think maybe somebody's in there. So we had to take a little bit of a risk to VES those rooms to get it done.
Now, Tim, did you know which 4 guys you had on the rescue, or were you giving that order regardless of who was showing up?
So I knew that Captain Kazbak was on the rescue. I knew that he had a crew of 4, because when Captain signs on going to a fire, he always signs on with his crew side. I didn't know what his crew was. I knew he was on the rig. So I was confident. We've known each other for a long time. We've trained together. We've been all over the place. I was confident that I could task him with that job and he could get it done. That not saying I wouldn't have tasked another company with doing it, because we've trained on it. But yes, those guys being a rescue company, I was confident they would get it done. But I would have assigned any company in town coming in to do that. And I would hope if I wasn't there, somebody would do it without needing to be pulled. But I was there a few minutes before them, so I had a long time to size it up and know, hey, this has got to get done.
Cool. All right. And then what did you end up, just for fire, once you pulled them out, what were your, just so we can, at least mention it, what were your fire tactics with this? Or what did you guys end up doing to extinguish the fire?
We dumped we had a 2.5 line going, and then we had an 1.75 inch, and then Manchester Engine 5 was there, and their battalion chief came up to me real quick, and kind of gave me a suggestion of let's use the blitz gun. That power line down in front really did hamper us a little bit.
Okay.
But we ended up getting a blitz gun kind of in front of that, and we just eventually just started blasting it with water. Like the cap said, we did have an exposure issue to the left. The house was starting to off gas. The siding was melting. We had some other issues that we ran into. We had some water supply issues real quick. Manchester Engine 5 was there. Their chauffeur did a fantastic job helping out our chauffeur getting it done. So we recovered quick, but obviously after the end of the day, we dumped a lot of water at it. So
Well, and in the end, I mean, it's hypothetically, if you had pulled someone out, it would still be a win, and it was a win. I mean, look, showing up at this isn't something you put 1 or 2 lines on and then walk away, and the homeowner moves in the next day. You know, I mean, this is so. I think, yeah, go.
100%, right? No matter what we did with this house, this thing was going in a dumpster in a few weeks. It's been rebuilt. They have a fantastic house, but I'm happy to say, as much as we had some other issues, the searches went as best as it possibly could. So,
Yeah, and like I said, I just think it's you know, you're going to say, well, success isn't the right word, because this was a successful operation. Just because you didn't find anybody doesn't mean that, first of all, there was no one to be found. So, but this is such a perfect example between the fire conditions and the type of house and the crew resource and whatnot. Just a perfect example of where you really, in this case, VES really was the only option. And this is and there's a lot of departments, I have no doubt in my mind, Tim, that would not perform VES at an operation like this. They would say either that it's not survivable, or it's fully involved, or just wouldn't feel comfortable sending their members to do it, and they would not perform a search at this operation, both career and volunteer alike. And there's a lot of departments that would, but I think this is a perfect example of one where it really needs to be something where every department is able to put you know, a member into that window to be able to make a search, or God forbid someone says my kid's in there, to actually be able to make the grab. So
yeah, I agree with you on that, because me and the captain had conversations about he wasn't trying to toot his horn, he wasn't trying to blow me up, but he wasn't sure if other chiefs might have ordered that to be done. And the benefit that I have as being the training officer is that I know these guys are trained in it. I know we've done it. We've been there. I've seen them do it. So I know the skill levels were there. I do agree with you. Like I'm on a career job as well. I can tell you there might be some guys at my job who wouldn't do this. And there's definitely volunteers who wouldn't do it. So, but again, it comes down to training. I really do think that being trained really benefit us 100% in getting this done. So, yeah. I mean, looking at that picture, you can tell, I mean, the fire was coming up that standard stairwell. It was up, I guarantee, on that second floor. So like the cap said, having those doors closed was huge. Yeah. And I can tell you, when the police finally walked over to me and said, hey, the homeowners are not home, I was relieved, because when they weren't reporting anybody in those rooms, my thought was, oh no, they were in the living room and we're going to be finding bodies afterwards. So them not finding anybody and the homeowners coming home was a huge relief for me as the incident commander. So brought my stress level way down.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you bring up a good point, like, oh, we would have found them in the living room, because let's be real, most homeowners are obviously not firefighters. So if their house is on fire, they're not going to try to go out the window. They're going to try to go out the way that they came in. And so they're going to try to, you know, exit through, you know, go down the stairs through the living room and try to exit that way. And so I think that sometimes, obviously this not being the case, VES gets used too much by some, because you got to still search that area that's the egress point. You know, you got to make sure that you're actually getting to the people in the most likely way possible. And so not that it gets used too much, but it's not a replacement for searching the main areas of the house as well. So all right, so if you guys don't have anything else, and if you guys think of something later, by all means chime back in, but that's pretty much all I have for you guys on that one. I mean, that was a great run through. The picture definitely helps. I would say if we didn't have the picture to work with, we would have you know, it would be hard to describe what the conditions were like. So that picture, I think Chief Cooney just said, your photographer, Dennis Brunel, took that. So definitely a good, very nice job on that. So, all right. So next up, we have from Watertown, Kevin Pro. So Kevin, are you with us?
Yeah, can you hear us?
Can hear you guys. So are you guys both there?
Yeah, so we got, I'm Lieutenant Kevin Pro. We got firefighter Traver behind us and Lieutenant Lafreniere. We're with the Watertown Fire Department.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. I know, Kevin, you've been my my main contact, so I appreciate you getting them to join us as well.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So why don't you, and I maybe should have done this with South Windsor, but why don't you just tell us a little bit about what your department makeup is? You're 100% volunteer, right?
Yeah, so for Watertown, we have a population around 22,000 people. We're 100% volunteer. We operate out of 2 firehouses. We have around 80 active members right now. We run 2,600 calls a year, but 2,000 of those are medical, around 700 are going to be the fire calls. That's about average no matter where you go. If you run medical calls, it's like 70% medical calls.
Yep.
So that's basically, you know, the makeup of Watertown. Like I said,
this was a daytime weekday fire, correct?
Yeah, so this call came in, it was a Thursday, December 17th of last year. It came in shortly before 1:30 p.m.
Okay.
The night before, we had snow going into the morning. They were actually still out there cleaning up the roads and stuff when this call came in. So we had icy snow conditions. The driveway wasn't plowed, probably 6 to 8 inches, maybe more on the driveway. The neighbor who actually saw the house on fire fired up his snowblower and started snowblowing around the hydrant for us. So it wasn't even dug out. So
what did it come in as? Did it come in as a structure fire? Or did it come in as smoke or what?
I believe a town employee drove by or somebody drove by and they called it in as a structure fire. And then we had an additional update from a dispatch saying that there is somebody trapped inside the house.
Where do you know where they got that update from?
I think it was from who called it in.
Yeah, I think whoever called it in, I know the town was out plowing. I know one of those guys called. I don't know if that was the initial call. When we got there, there was neighbors around and stuff. So I'm pretty sure it was one of the neighbors or a passerby who called it in. And then we got the update while we were en route that there was somebody still trapped inside the house.
Okay. Do you guys have background music or is that someone else on here?
We don't.
All right. All right, I got it. All right, so who was first on scene?
Deputy was first on scene.
Okay. And were you guys the first apparatus on scene?
So when it came in as there was somebody trapped, this house is actually 3 houses up from our company to our second firehouse on Buckingham Street. There was a firefighter there at the time, and when he heard there was somebody, he kind of grabbed some of his stuff and made his way up there just to be, you know, first on scene to see what's going on, see her location and stuff. And when he arrived there, he was able to go. It was on the D side of the structure, and he was actually talking to her through the window.
Okay.
So that's how we had a awesome location of where she was. He said that he was talking to her, then she stopped talking. So we were pretty confident that the room we were going in, that's where she was still located.
I think that's a fair. So did he give you the report on the radio? Hey, we have someone in the window.
He didn't have a radio. Deputy was there pretty quick. He touched base with him and he gave us the update on the radio. Again, dispatch already told us there's possibly somebody inside. Yep. Deputy confirmed it.
And then were you guys ordered to VES or was it your decision? What was the decision?
I'll hand it over to Lieutenant Lafreniere because he was the first on scene.
Okay.
So I arrived not long after the deputy had confirmed that there was someone inside with myself and a driver on the engine coming from the house. Our firehouse is 3 buildings up. We weren't waiting for anyone else. I got there, stretched a line towards where they were, I couldn't see them with the smoke condition over coming down from the house down the hill. And when I had gotten up the driveway to where they were, the deputy had made the decision that we were going to VEIS, and I left the dry line there by the front door.
Okay.
And these guys ended up rolling up shortly after me.
Okay.
Yeah, we came in on the second due engine. We had a driver and two other guys that we had them do water supply, and we left them for the water supply and the attack. And myself and firefighter Traver met Lieutenant Lafreniere at the back window where our deputy was calling us on the D side of the structure. And that's where the three of us met up at that time.
So initially, what equipment did you bring with you guys? Because this will get into play later. So what did you bring?
I grabbed the camera.
Okay.
I think I had my camera on me. I don't remember if it was on,
Okay.
but I had brought a lineup with me, so I didn't have any tools at the time.
Okay. So did you guys have did you need a ladder, or was the window kind
The
of-
windows, the bottom of the window is probably I'm 5'10", so I would say it's about 5 feet off the ground.
Okay.
Luckily, there was a spigot right at the bottom of the window, and when I got there masked up, the bottom of the window was already opened, so we didn't have to open that anymore. I was able to stand on that spigot and get in. It was pretty difficult. So after I got in, it was a single pane window. I stood up and blew the top of it off to make it a little bit easier for them because
Okay.
I mean, I'm not a big guy and stuff, and it was tight for me to even get in there.
So once you got in there, was the door closed? Could you close the door?
So this house is definition of hoarder house. We've actually been there for medical calls before.
Yeah.
So, you know, we had guys who actually seen it before the fire, and
Okay.
it was a known hoarding house and stuff. When I got in the window, I landed right on her bed. It was up against the windowsill. I couldn't even move the bed if I tried. You couldn't even walk around this room. But no, the door was open, and we tried to isolate the room and all that, but it was with the hoarder condition and stuff. We didn't have that option.
So everything took place with that door opened.
Yes. Yep.
And did that make things harder? Okay.
Yeah.
What were conditions like in there? Was it hot? Was it smoky?
I mean, it definitely was hot. The visibility, I would say, was close to zero. When I did locate her, I did get close to the ground just to see if she was breathing and stuff. And I couldn't even tell you like what she was wearing or anything. It was pretty bad in there.
So by then she was not conscious?
No, she was not conscious. No.
Okay. Big person?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're basically over here, right? If you're looking at the screen, you guys are like in there.
I just see you. I'm.
I didn't share screen. I'm sorry. Hold on. So you're like over there, right?
D side. So that's actually going to be.
That's like the C, right? So you're like
That's
over on
the-
that side.
Yeah, kind of. That would be the B side. There you go. So where that truck is, exactly where that pickup truck
Okay.
is.
Okay. So like on that side of the structure over there.
Yeah,
kinda.
right, exactly right where
That
that truck
window.
was.
Okay. All right.
The fire was coming all out of the A side. Both those windows were going, and right out that door, which is at the top of that little half staircase there.
Okay. So you have a big person, they're unconscious. You can't close the door. And you said you have heavy fire on the A side, so you really
Yeah.
only have one way to get them out, correct?
Yeah, back out the window.
Okay, so then you guys perform something that doesn't happen often. So where'd you guys go from there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we made a couple of attempts to make her, to get her up out of the windows with Lieutenant Pro at her feet and me and Scott up under her shoulders. And with the way she was built and the way her weight was oriented, we couldn't get her up off the ground. Every time we would try to pull her, her extremities would just kind of slide right in between our arms and such. After 2, maybe 3 attempts at that, the deputy chief from the outside had made the decision to cut the window with a saw, and we did that to slide her right out
So who did that? Did they do that from the outside?
Yeah.
from the outside.
Another captain of ours grabbed a vent saw and did a window conversion, window to door conversion, I guess you would call it. And we we dragged her away from the window because that's where we were trying to get her up and out. We were, fighting with that again with the hoarding conditions. So we pulled her back. He made a couple of cuts down from the inside. We tried to force it out. It was kind of difficult. I finally stood up and blew it out. And we made it a little bit bigger. We ain't cut down to the floor. They was vents, heating down there and
Okay.
other stuff. So we probably made it another maybe foot bigger going down.
Okay.
And that's pretty much all we needed to help get her out. Because like I said, she was wearing probably pajamas, I would call it, and stuff. So there was nothing to grab onto. There was no belt. I couldn't even get on the ground if I tried to get, like under her and lift her up because of the amount of stuff in that room.
Yeah. And so those of you that aren't familiar with the terminology or whatever, this isn't the window, but it's just an example. The window cut down, basically you make a cut, from the window down to the floor or wherever you're going to do it, from the window down to the floor. So you have two vertical cuts and then a horizontal cut. And when you knock this, where the X is, when you knock this section out, you basically have a door here, if you will. And it's a lot of times flush with the floor so that you can just slide your, down firefighter or victim out the window. So, that's something that you see it done in training. And I know there's always we're never going to have to do that. And it's like, oh, we're going to do this stupid thing. And it's awesome to see it done. This was a very underrated. It wasn't talked about nearly as much as it could have been. You guys did a phenomenal job here, both from the inside, your deputy chief on the outside. This was a top-notch coordinated rescue that, they talked about in the last one of the deck stacked against you. You guys had it just as much here. You didn't have the power lines, but you had the snow. You didn't maybe have quite as much fire, but you had a big victim and, real no hoarding conditions. So not that we're comparing one or the other, but, you guys had a lot of, obstacles to overcome in this case, I would say for sure.
The other thing they left out, and they're probably too proud to admit it, but I'll admit it for them, is that the fire was actually rolling through the roof area of the structure.
Okay.
She coming back down. Right after we got the victim outside is when the fire was down in that space.
Yeah.
So with the repositioning the victim inside the bedroom, first of all, dragging her away from the outside wall to cut that, make the window to door transition, it made it 10 times easier when we grabbed her. She slid right out.
Yep.
So
Conditions got a lot better in there too at that point.
That just shows you the importance of closing the door when you're able to.
Yeah.
But it also brings up the point that you're not always able to close the door. In your case, it was hoarding conditions.
Yeah.
In other cases, it may be that there is no door.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that a little bit. But just a tremendous job here. And the VES in this case again comes into play because you guys had a known location of the victim, not just a known victim. I could have said there's a victim in here, go find them. And I think your best option generally is the front door. But in your case, it's a known location of the victim. So you can say, all right, if I go in that window, I'm going to get them. It makes it a home run. Heavy fire conditions, so you may not have been able to get to them even if you went in the front door. And, the hope that you could isolate yourself, so even if you went in the front door and found them, it sounds like you probably wouldn't have been able to bring them back out the front door. So.
Yeah, there was fire coming out the front door when we got there.
Okay, so so you didn't have that option. So
and there was a back door that later when we were in there, doing salvage and all that stuff, and I highly doubt we would have been able to get her out of there. With the hoarding conditions and how, like I said, we couldn't even move the bed to get a better grip on her and stuff.
Yeah.
There was so much stuff in there.
And again, that's all you're saying. We maybe could have gotten her, maybe not. That's all assuming you could find your way back to that door. With these conditions, who knows? So just a very dangerous operation. But this is, if if you didn't join the fire department to do this day, then I don't know what you joined for, you know? So I know talking to you, Kevin's been my contact, so he's the one I've really talked to. And could not be any more humble or modest, but a tremendous job. He originally was skeptical to come on here, but I brought you on here for a specific purpose, and it's to show that VES can happen anywhere. It's not a big city tactic. It's not a rural tactic. It's an everyday tactic. Everyday meaning you're ready for it every day, not that you're going to do it every day. You may never do this again in your career, but it's something that obviously you've proven you need to be ready to do at some point. You guys have anything else? So, well, you know, what we will do is touch base on the background of it, like the training and whatnot. What have you guys done? I mean, is VES something you guys have practiced before? Is a window cut down conversion something you've practiced before? I mean, I assume you didn't just take these out of the back of your hat and say, hey, I saw this on YouTube once, let me try it
Yeah.
while the shit's on.
Since I've been a member, I don't think we've done the window to door conversion. I know the guy who got the stall, he's a career firefighter. Maybe, you know, that's something he came up with. It could have been our deputy. I wasn't sure. We were inside. But I don't know who came up with that. But for training, we've done a lot. We've had a few houses here in Watertown that we're able to burn and do a lot of practices in. And we've done a lot going through windows, getting people, you know, giving size ups from the inside and the conditions we have.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of that kind of training. Especially in the last couple of years here.
Yeah, I know you've done a lot with you know, Pete Morato's done a lot with you guys, and I think that's awesome. So I saw, you know, obviously he set you guys up for success, so that's awesome. I mean, again, this is a same thing that with the last one. This is an incident you could put in front of a lot of fire departments, and it would not go this way. So you guys, I know you're humble, all three of you, but you should be very proud of what happened here. The victim made it too, right?
She actually just called they're gonna rebuild the house, and she's seeing if the town will let her put like a mobile home, I guess, in the driveway right now. So she's walking, she's talking. She was in the burn unit for a while.
Yeah.
When we got her out, she was unconscious. She had secretions in her mouth. I remember somebody saying stop CPR because she looked that she was deceased. And then I remember saying she's not deceased yet. And as soon as we got her out, there was a basket right there. We threw her on the basket and like two other people, and we were the ones who actually ran her to the ambulance, still masked up and stuff. When we got her out.
Awesome. Anything else you guys wanted to touch on with this? I mean,
No, glad to have, you know, for you to have us on, and glad to be able to talk about it, and hopefully, you know, we bounce ideas off each other and we all learn from one another.
yeah, that's the idea. I just thank you guys for joining. I'll just I put this up before, but this is a picture of, you said this is conditions of when you were affecting the rescue, right?
Yeah. When we went in, there was no water on it. By the time we got out and got her to the ambulance, they did a transitional attack. They hit it with the blitz gun, and then they picked up the line that Lieutenant Lafreniere left when he went to go do the search, and they went in and put out the rest of the hot spots. So we were in there while that fire was coming out.
Yeah. So it just shows you could have a heavy fire condition, but if there still can very well be survivable space somewhere in that structure, you know. While it was certainly the amount of survivability of it was waning, it was survivable for a long time, you know. So, well, guys, thank you very much for joining us. You know, and hopefully we will see you guys soon. Again, thank you very much for telling us, you know, sharing your experience and whatnot.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So if there are no questions, I'll be keeping an eye on the chat window. No one put out anything. So we're going to continue on. Just, all right. All right. So go to my notes. All right. So So to continue on, I hope that those two stories were kind of those, just kind of set the tone that I don't like when I hear it's a big, and I've heard it, that, oh, VES is just a big city tactic. We don't need to know about it. That's something they do in the city. Do we do it more often in the city? Absolutely. But a couple of reasons are staffing is one of them, and it's a built-in protocol. So it's something that can get done automatically. While we coordinate it, it's not something that needs to be specially called for. So why do I believe that VES is an important tactic? Why have I dedicated a night to it? Why have I dedicated basically a burn trailer to it, or at least half of a burn trailer to it? Why do I believe that it's an important tactic that needs to be trained on and should be part of your, rotational training in your department and a tool for you on scene? So first of all, I've mentioned it a few times. If you have a known location of a victim, I think that again, without the verbiage of it, is pretty obvious. If you have a victim in a window, like we just heard about, you're going to go get them. And so, especially in houses that are larger, houses that, the stairs are not right in front of the front door, you might have trouble finding the second floor. I think being able to enter a window where you have a known location of a victim is a tremendous asset. Number two, I think when you're talking about VES up on a second floor, I think burned out stairs are a major issue. So if you have a heavy fire on the first floor and the stairs are either compromised, burning through, collapsing, whatever the case may be, even if you know where they are, ascending those stairs may not be a viable option. And so being able to enter a window on the second floor and bypass those stairs is certainly an important thing to be able to do. So the other, crowding and hoarding conditions. So we talked about hoarding, obviously, in the last one. Probably not an issue too many departments have, but crowding of members on the first floor. If you have, if it's a drill night and suddenly you end up with 2 lines in there, or, whatever the case may be, if you're trying to get to the second floor and there's too many members stuffed on the first floor, your best bet may be to simply VES, whether it be the first floor or the second floor. And then hoarding conditions, like, the biggest issue with hoarding, there's a lot, or it's not a hoarding class tonight, but a huge issue with hoarding is just going to be able to navigate the house. And so a lot of those telltale signs that you use to navigate the house, you're really not going to be able to do when you have hoarding conditions. A compromised floor would be another one. So if you have a basement fire and it's starting to burn through the first floor and you want to search the second floor, you may not feel comfortable sending your guys in the front door, find the stairs, go up to the second floor. But if the fire hasn't gotten up to the second floor yet, that second floor should be, fairly well structurally stable still. And so entering that window on the second floor would be a very viable option, even if stability of the first floor may be in doubt. Next point I have is not finding the stairs, but I mentioned that already. And I think in this day and age, the way houses are built, combination of lightweight construction, the combination of the contents that are being used to build the structure, the fires are burning a lot quicker. They're burning, they're moving through the house because a lot of modern day house plans are less compartmentalized and more larger areas. That fire is able to move through the larger areas fairly quickly. And we're finding conditions like what we've seen in the 2 examples tonight, where the front door is not a viable option to enter the structure. And so we do have to find alternate access points in order to get in there. And then I think one of the biggest things, one of the biggest advantages with VES is that you're able to isolate yourself and you are in close proximity to your egress point. And so if you take a standard bedroom, and listen, I don't know, let's say it's 12 by 20, which is probably on the larger side. If it's 12 by 20, 12 by 20 is a fairly small area to search, and it'll feel large, but you add some furniture in there, you'll be able to search it, and you're never that far from your exit. So if conditions go south, you're not talking about crawling back to the front door or whatever the case may be. So I think that's another big example or a big advantage of VES. So I want to talk about, and I've mentioned this a little bit, but I want to really get into the two scenarios of VES, one being a known life hazard, where you have, like I said, someone pointing at the window and saying, I always use the example, my kid's in there, or the more targeted VES where you don't really know if someone's in there. That would be more the South Windsor case, but you know that you need to get in there and do a search because it's a survivable area. And so the known life hazard, the known location, that's a fairly straightforward one. You know someone's in that room, you got to get in there and search. When it comes to the the probable life hazard, and we just, want to get in there and search, but we're not sure where to go, or we're not sure exactly what room to do. We're going to talk a little bit tonight about some of the rooms to look for, some of the windows to look for. Obviously, we want to generally search the bedrooms on the second floor. We want to search livable space. The kitchen window would not be a good window to enter, both because a lot of times the kitchen window is right above the sink. So that's going to be a tough place to enter. And more importantly, you're not going to be able to isolate yourself. The bathroom window is not going to be a good one to search because generally the window is going to be really hard to get into. It's going to be very small. And then, but we will be able to isolate it with the door. So that part's good. And it's certainly possible to find someone in a bathroom, but that wouldn't be my go-to. So let's talk about the actual action of VES. And I always say when I teach VES, and we've done our, I'll call it small scale VES classes so far, it's not that I'm trying to always teach all the ins and outs of VES. What I really want guys to get is if they are told to VES how to do it. And so I realize that it's not going to be an every fire event, but it's something that once the chief turns to you and says, hey, we need to VES that window, or the mother says, my kid's in that room, it's something that we need to be able to do. And we need to not be able or not have, hesitation with. So the standard, and I'll just call it standard again, because it's what I've been brought up with. And it seems to be that a lot of departments, this is how, the tool complement and whatnot that they carry. So generally VES is a 2-man operation. However, in a low manpower environment, certainly it could be a 1-man operation as well. But generally it's going to be a 2-person operation. And we're going to go with, we're talking about private dwellings tonight, because again, we're keeping it more to the suburban rural side. So we're talking about, the private dwelling side of things. I'm going to find a picture up here to kind of go along with that. This is a good one I like. So let me share this up here and I'll continue. All right. So this is a cape where you have, the window up there. And so in terms of what tools you're going to bring with you for a standard second floor VES operation, most likely it's obviously going to be a ladder. The 24, while we heard about a 14 in the last one, the 24 is generally the go-to ladder. And the 24 is going to be 14-foot embedded length. So it's really the best of both worlds. And then obviously you can get up to 24 as well. So the 24-foot ladder. And then we mentioned the thermal imaging camera. That's definitely a tool you want to bring. And then usually it's a Halligan and a 6-foot hook. So a Halligan and a 6-foot hook are going to be the good kind of go-to tools there. And you could always bring more. You could bring a set of irons. The more guys you have, the more tools you could bring. But generally the basic is a 6-foot hook. And it's usually the Halligan hook or the New York hook, whatever your department calls it, and a Halligan. So the ladder gets thrown. The location of the ladder has to be below the window, so in that rescue position. So it would get thrown right to the bottom of the window. So, and we're not VESing this. I'll find a better one so that I'm not kind of going against myself here. But we're not VESing the room that's on fire generally. Okay, so we're going to VES a room that is in close proximity to the room that's on fire. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But your ladder is going to get thrown right to the base of the sill there. We really don't want it above the sill, because if we have to make a hastily retreat, we're going to get caught on that ladder. If we have to send a victim out of the window, we're going to get caught. They're going to get caught on that ladder. So we really want to be cognizant to make sure that the tip of that ladder is level with the sill or just below it. We do not want to be on the side of the window. We don't want to be in a vent position. Yes, we're going to be venting the window. We're not going to throw the ladder up to the side of the window, vent it, and then reposition. The ladder goes to the sill or right below it. Okay. Now, when I first started, learning, when I got on and started learning VES, a lot of guys were teaching you take the ladder, you extend it, you bang it into the window, break the glass with the ladder, set up the ladder, and then go and get in. That changed a few years ago when, not that we were learning about wind impact, not wind impact, but vent limited fires and whatnot, but it just became that much more important that we were really focusing on flow path control even more than we were before that. So now I don't really know anybody that teaches taking the window with the ladder. I guess an exception to that might be if you were going to vent the fire room and then move the ladder over to the room you were going to VES. Maybe you would take the ladder, vent the window of the fire room with the ladder, and then just move it over as kind of a quick thing. But it wouldn't be a VES operation where you would take the ladder and vent the window. And the reasoning for that is if that door to the bedroom is open, then that time of repositioning the ladder and getting up there is all time that the air or the flow path, if you will, has the ability to draw the fire into that bedroom. And again, our goal here, yes, our end goal is to perform a primary search and get victims, but our short-term goal is to isolate the room that we are going to search so that we are buying ourselves time to perform that search. So ladder to the sill, ladder just below to the sill, masked up on the ground, ready to go. So when you're climbing that ladder, you should be masked up, ready to go. Some people will mask up at the tip of the ladder. If you're comfortable doing that, that's fine. But the bottom line is when we break that glass with the tool, we should be ready. We should be on air, ready to go. Okay. So that's the bottom line. And, some guys will use the Halligan, some guys will use the hook. Either tool will hook on the rungs. The 6-foot New York hook probably does it better. So you could hook the, Z part of the hook onto the rungs, get up there, take the Halligan, clear out the window. And then once you clear out the window, or once you have the window vented, what you're going to want to do is probe the floor. So there's two things we're going to do with the floor. We're going to probe the floor and we're going to sound the floor. And those are two very distinct and different things. So probing the floor is, for lack of a better term, a nice soft touch with the tool to see if there are any victims just inside of that window. Think about if, in the last incident, the Watertown incident, if they had taken the tool to feel for a floor and banged it as hard as they could and stabbed this woman in the, it could be the face if that's how she's hanging, forks to the face, probably not going to be a good thing. So we want to probe that area and make sure that it's clear of victims or any obstruction. In the last case, I think they had a bed, so probably not as possible. After we probe it, then we want to sound the floor. So obviously we want to know that there's actually a floor there. And the floor could be missing for many reasons. It could be because, I'll use this example. This is not a window I would VES, but there's a very good chance that this doesn't have a floor in front of it. And that's just, the stairwell, an open stairwell. So we want to make sure that there's a floor there. If there's a floor there, we want to make sure that it's fairly well intact. We don't want it to have been burned through. In the urban environment, it is more of an issue with less now, but drug dens and holes in floors and things like that. But we want to make sure, even in an arson, maybe cutting holes in floors. So we want to make sure there's a floor there, and that's going to support our weight. So we're going to give it a good solid pound with our tool. After we do that, we need to actually make entry into the room. And so I would say there's a lively debate in the VES, for lack of a better term, VES community about entering head first versus entering feet first. And I'll delve into that in a minute. So after we enter the room, the first thing we want to do when we enter that room, even if we find a body, and they even mentioned it in the last one, they had a victim in their hands. And the first thing that they wanted to do was not get them out. The first thing they wanted to do was close that door. That is the single most important thing that you can do with VES, is to close that door. Even a cheap Home Depot hollow core door will hold back a tremendous amount of fire. So you got to get that door closed as soon as possible. That will eliminate the flow path. It will actually hold back fire if you have fire in the hallway. It will help to limit the smoke condition in some cases. So definitely getting that door closed has got to be of prime importance. Now, before we close that door, we do want to probe the hallway and make sure that there's no victims right in that hallway. And so let me give this example. I will go back to my Cape, and I see a question up there. I'll address it in a minute. Let's go back to my Cape ranch example is fine. It doesn't really matter. And you can call this a second floor if you want to. So let's say I'm VESing this window here. Okay. You guys can't see it. I'm sorry. This would help. So you guys should be able to see this now. Let's say I'm VESing this window here. Okay. If there was a victim in this room, okay, this bedroom 10 by 13, they hear their smoke alarm going off. They run out and they go down right here in the hallway. Okay. They open up the bedroom door. They realize it's smoky. They try to run out their front door and they go down in that hallway and they're unconscious. Now, here I am, we get there, we open up the front door, we can't get in there. So we decide to do a VES. So we come back, we choose this bedroom window. So we do everything we just talked about. We throw the ladder, mask up, take the glass, probe the floor, sound the floor, come in. Now, if I come up here and just close this door and do a search, I'm going to get a great search done of this bedroom. However, what I would potentially have done is miss this victim here. So when I come to this doorway, before I close that door, I want to probe this hallway as far as I can. Because if you think about it, someone that's in their bedroom wakes up to a smoke alarm or smells smoke, starts to run out. If it's that bad, they're only going to make it a couple steps out of their bedroom door. And so finding someone in that hallway is a very viable possibility if they were trying to escape. So we want to make sure that we probe that hallway before we close that door. Okay. But we don't want to stray too far because we don't necessarily know the layout. We don't necessarily know what other ways there are to get out. So we want to make sure that we close that door and now search. And now I can search, assuming I don't find a victim there, I can now search this bedroom, like a gentleman. Okay. So that's how that, scenario, if you will, is going to go. And then the question that comes is what happens when you're done searching that bedroom? And again, a few schools of thought: you could get back out, move the ladder and search the adjoining bedroom. That's definitely a viable option. I think it's going to depend on what the status of the fire is. If you open up that door again and you hear that the fire's knocked down, then I certainly don't think it's a bad idea to just go interior to this bedroom or this bedroom and start searching, knowing that you have, where you can get back to that other bedroom, if you will. All right. So that's my thought on that part. Someone here mentioned thoughts on scanning with the tick before entering the window. So we have, again, either a one-man or a two-man operation. So I would say that I don't think it's a bad idea in some cases. In this case, if you're going to be VESing a corner bedroom, I don't know that I would do it. I don't know that I would scan before I enter, just because I know where the door is, right? The door cannot be on this wall because this is an exterior wall. The door cannot be on this wall because it's an exterior wall. It's going to be in this corner. It can't be on this wall because it's going to adjoin the bedroom, and it can't really be on this wall because it's adjoining in the bedroom. So in a corner room, you pretty much know where the door is. And again, I think that's the most important part of what you're going to scan for. So if it's a corner room, I'm probably less inclined to scan with the camera. Now, that said, who has the camera? So if it's the person going in first, well, then I'm less likely to do it. If I'm going in first and I don't have a camera, and then my partner gets up on the tip of the ladder, well, that's basically his job, is to scan with the camera. So, I think that kind of answers that question. But it does kind of boil down to who has the camera, right? So, and that brings up a good point, which is what is that second guy's job on the tip of the ladder? So obviously he's going to help you throw the ladder. He's going to be, assistant to you and whatnot. But his other main job on that ladder, aside from being able to scan with the tick, is to keep an eye on you, make sure that you don't end up, leaving the room and not realizing it. And also just being a homing beacon. So if you do get turned around, a quick bang on the wall, you'll be able to, find your way back to the window. And then obviously if you find a victim, he will be able to help you remove that victim. So I think that's the main purpose of that person on the tip of the ladder. Let's see. But I think that's the big stuff there in terms of the basic operation. The other thing that you can do that I think is important, and again, a lot of this stuff's personal preference, so I don't want to put it on you as you have to do it, but tool location is a big one. So you may have the Halligan in your hand, but that 6-foot hook, you're not going to want to walk around with it. So if you entered this window here, the best place a lot of times for the 6-foot hook is kind of leaning it up against the windowsill, probing out into the room. So if you think about this is a 10 by 13 room. If you have a 6-foot hook, it's going to come pretty much halfway into the room, just a little shy of halfway into the room. And so if you are by yourself at any point, you could pretty much sprawl out in this room and you're going to hit that hook and be able to find your way out, without really trying. So that's a great way. I would put it in the corner of the window. I kind of pictured it in the middle here, but I would put it in the corner of the window. And that's a great homing beacon for yourself. Again, I'm used to doing VES by myself, having someone coming up behind me. And I think in that known life hazard, that's certainly something that you need to be prepared to do as well. Maybe not in the suspected life hazard category. We're not going to do that, but certainly someone says my kid's in there, you're going in by yourself. So I think that helps tremendously. And then, like I said, if the fire gets knocked down and you're still in there, now you have a 6-foot hook to help pull ceilings. And we all know those are always at a premium, someone to help pull ceilings. So that becomes extremely important. So that's my take on tools and ladders. However, there are some houses that really don't require a ladder. And so in this case, here, if you're going to VES this window, then obviously you need a ladder. If you're going to do these windows, you need a ladder. These windows, you probably need a ladder. This attic window is probably not a viable option unless you're kind of tiny. But these two windows up here, probably 2 different rooms, and you could VES them without a ladder, right? I'm sorry. One ladder will get 2 rooms. So all you need is a ladder to get to this porch roof. And then you can very easily VES and have access to 2 rooms up there. And so I think that is a big thing to pick out as well in the non-known location, right? So if you're just told, hey, we're having trouble getting the 2nd floor, go VES the 2nd floor, and you don't have a specific room that you want to, that you're said, hey, go VES that room, rather than throwing a ladder here and VESing that room and then moving the ladder over here and VESing that room, I can throw one ladder up here, access to the porch, have emergency egress from 2 rooms. So I always look for that in my size up if I'm tasked with the VES side of things. I always look for that. How can I get the most bang for my buck with ladders? Can I throw it to a porch and have access to multiple windows? Can I throw it to a setback and have access to multiple windows? Those types of things. So this is a good view that I like to point out a few different things on this structure. So this is a good example. It's probably a newer building, probably in the lightweight construction category, a lot of wood, a lot of laminated stuff that's going to burn really, really well. And so having that heavy body of fire out the basement window, if you're not thinking about structural integrity concerns of that 1st floor, then you're probably missing something. So this is one of those situations where, again, I said that searching that second floor, your safest access may be VES. And if you're concerned about the structural integrity of that first floor, we know where the stairs are to the second floor. In this case, most likely it's right in front of that front door. But if we are truly concerned about the integrity of those stairs or the integrity of that first floor, then throwing a ladder to the second floor in this case may be a viable option. I'm really not concerned at this point about the structural integrity of the second floor. And so I could put a crew up there, 3 a.m. to get some good searches done, before things go south. The other thing I like to point out with this house would be some windows that I would gravitate towards and some windows that I would steer away from. So a big thing to pick out here is that there's no windows on the B as in boy side even. So that takes out a whole side, right? Your two, but in terms of other windows, unless I have a known location of a life hazard, I'm staying away from the window above the front door because that's a 50-50 shot. In this case, I'm going to go with 100% that's an open area inside there, cathedral ceilings right inside. But even if that window matches the other windows on that second floor, a lot of times that's an express ride back down to the first floor. And so that's the window right above the front door. Unless I have a reason to go into that window, I'm going to stay away from that window because way too many times that doesn't lead to anywhere. It's not a room and it just goes straight down to the front door. And I know someone's going to send me a picture of their house where it is a door, where it does go to a room. It absolutely happens. And again, if someone says my kid's in that window, I'm going in that window. But if I'm just tasked with VES of a second floor, I'm probably staying away from that window for that purpose. The other reason I'm staying away from that window is it's usually a pain in the ass in terms of it's going to affect the front door, right? So if I throw a ladder to that window, and in this case, I have this overhang here, but if I did not have that overhang, the only way I'm getting a ladder to that window is in front of the front door. And there's no way that 24-foot ladder is not getting knocked down by the first hose line getting stretched past it at some point. So I'm staying away from that unless I absolutely have to use it. The other example you can see here would be, smaller windows in the back. And so coupled with the size of the window, no one wants to watch me pee. So they're going to make that window smaller and usually, farther up off the floor. So coupled with that and this, the vent pipe there, that tells me that in this case, maybe both of these windows, but a lot of the times you'll see, one window will be obviously smaller, like this will be a normal size window. And then this is a smaller window. But those are bathroom windows. And again, unless I have a known reason to search the bathroom, that's not going to be my prime window to enter to VES, right? So in this case, this is my window. These might be my windows, or any of these, front windows could be a good VES window. Okay. Again, this one you could. The problem is it's just a lot of glass. It's a lot of stuff to deal with. And frankly, it's hard to tell what this room is. It could be a master bedroom. It could be a bonus room. So the chances that there might not be a door there are possible. So again, probably stay away from that unless you had a known location. I'm going for the known windows. All right. Let's see. I want to find a cape. So here's another couple good examples. All right, so this is a cape again, and it's a combination. It's got a few different things we talked about. So, and guys, don't worry about the smoke or fire conditions. I'm just talking about the layout of the house. Again, obviously a bathroom window. I'm staying away from that. And there's your vent stack there. Okay. So with capes, this is actually really a cape. So that's a bad example. There was another one. I'm going to go back to this one. This is a cape. So in this case, you've got the side windows. Now this one's not dormered, but even if you had dormers on the windows on the roof, I'm generally staying away from dormers on capes. I'm going to go for the side windows because they're a lot easier to ladder. And, it's just going to give you a more straight shot into those bedrooms. And you're going to be able to find the doors and isolate it, hopefully. And capes are a very, interesting one where you could definitely have an issue with, fire blocking your travel because the stairs are right in front of the front door. So the VES on that second floor may be your only option in order to properly search a cape. So I'm going to go back to my notes. I'm kind of starting to ramble a little bit. So some of the things we talked about: probing victims, sounding the floor, probing the hallway cannot be overlooked, closing the door cannot be overlooked, and then you can search like a gentleman, laying the tool in the window we talked about. So I want to talk about head first versus leg first. So how are we actually entering the window? And again, as I mentioned, there's a lot of schools of thought on this. This is going to be the last part of the VES, kind of my thoughts on VES. But how are we actually entering the window? And so that's a big, I don't want to say a big debate, but it definitely is a debate that you hear. So I was always taught feet first into the window. But I'll tell you why I don't always think that's the best way. So you got to think about, when we're talking about VES and his background, we're talking, again, a lot of times when cities are VESing, they're going in off of fire escapes. And if you think about the window layout in fire escapes, the floor of the fire escape is usually like maybe a foot below where the window is. And so if you think about a foot, it would be very tough to go head first into a window that's off a fire escape, right? When you think about a ladder, the ladder is going to be, like we said, the tip is going to be level with the sill, which is going to put your body maybe chest to the sill. And so in that case, to go feet first, you're actually going to have to climb where your feet are almost all the way up at the top of the ladder, and then kind of climb in. And you guys know, on portable ladders, the closer you are up to the top of the portable ladder, the less stable that ladder is going to be. And then once you have to shift your weight to get into that window, again, you're going to be pushing on the top of that ladder. So I think that a lot of the feet first comes from fire escapes, because that is the natural way to enter a window. Now, that's not to say I don't think you can go feet first off of a portable ladder. I actually think there's some advantages to it. And so I'll break those down to you now. I think the advantage of going in feet first off of a portable ladder would be that you get a better idea of what conditions are like in that room. So if I'm going in feet first off of a portable ladder, I am getting my entire body in that window, right? Now that could be a negative, but it also gives me a good idea of what's going on at that height. So if I go in to get in a window and I can't do it, and I get put back onto that portable ladder, that should give me a timeout. Okay, conditions are bad in there. I need to readjust my thought process, right? If I'm able to climb in that window completely, then I still, again, smoke kills people. It's usually not the fire. So I still got to get that search, but I know, okay, probably fire is not rolling towards me. All right. Other advantage of climbing in and going feet first would be that the first part of me to touch that floor are my feet. And so it gives you a good ability to hold on to the window, really give the floor a good sound. And if things do deteriorate, your head's still out the window, and you can very easily bail back out onto that ladder. Okay, so that's the upside. Now, the downsides are what I mentioned before. I think the ladder's a lot more likely to move. So that's a huge disadvantage. If things are bad, you're getting your upper part into that. So that's obviously not great. But I think the instability it's a very awkward feeling to try to climb into a window off of a portable ladder like that. So I'm not saying that's my preferred method, but I certainly understand why you would want to do that. And honestly, if you're not flexible, it's probably not going to happen. Okay. So then you transition to, all right, well, I'm going to dive into the window. And that I would say is more popular of what's taught when you're VESing off of a portable ladder, would be to go head first. So the upside of going in head first is obviously you're getting into that window quick. You're staying below what would be the smoke, fire, thermal layer, or whatever. And because we've sounded the floor already, we're hopeful that it is obviously good. The downsides of going head first would obviously be that there's no turning back, right? You're not getting halfway in and saying, oh crap, let me get out, and doing that in 2 seconds, right? Probably 2 seconds. You're not doing that instantly. Okay. And then you're going head first. So if there's a bed or something, you could potentially roll off something. It's not a big deal. It's just something to be aware of. All right. So those are kind of again, I see advantages and disadvantages to both. If you haven't tried both, I would definitely, make sure when you do training to try both. I would say that in the scheme of where you're operating with a partner, then I could see climbing into a window because you have someone butting the ladder for you. If you are operating by yourself and no one's butting the ladder for you, then I'm probably more likely to dive into the window than I am to climb in. So again, conditions are going to dictate it as well. But I think the biggest thing is if you're going to climb in and you get blown back by heat, would be to say, okay, things are bad in there. Let me take a second and regroup in terms of trying to figure out what's going on. So I'm going to address a question up here. Can you talk about considerations for teaching newer, less experienced members what they need to know about situational awareness, fire behavior, et cetera? Well, obviously we could spend 2 hours talking about that. What I would say is I'll back up a little bit. Don't take anything for granted. And I'll talk a little bit about that. That'll segue us nicely. Thank you. Into how our classes are going to run. But don't take anything for granted. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but don't think that you don't have to teach the basics. And so a lot of what we were thinking about was, all right, we're going to get ready to do it and teach VES, but I think we are going to spend a station on handling the portable ladder, carrying the tools, storing the tools, taking out a window, some of those things that maybe you think are basic because you've got some time in and you've done it, may not be as run of the mill or as second nature for some of the newer members. In terms of situational awareness and fire behavior, I think that's kind of a separate class in terms of looking for fire behavior. However, what I would say certainly is the person on that ladder should be able to read the smoke. The blacker it is, the more turbulent it is, the closer the fire is to you, the closer the fire is most likely to igniting. Obviously, looking up is a big one. Do you see fire rolling along the ceiling? Hopefully, before you close that door of the hallway, you can look down the hallway and at least get some idea of what conditions are like. But really, in a perfect world, which I realize we don't operate in, but in a perfect world, once you close that door, some of those issues about fire behavior go out the window for that one immediate room, right? So once we close that door, we're really hoping that we're isolating ourselves and not having to deal with some of those fire behavior parts. If I had a newer member, I would tell them to keep it simple. So I guess for newer members, I see the point of doing OVEIS or VEIS because they can literally take each step at once at a time. But just do the tactic, do the search. And if they're newer and less experienced, I would not want them to then open up the door, go down the hallway to the next room, right? I would want them to really stay in their lane of that one room. Okay. But I think the biggest thing is don't take anything for granted. Make sure you teach each and every step. So I hope that answers your question. I'm not going to go too much more on that without knowing, but if you have a follow-up to that, please feel free to send that out. So to round out, I'm going to say one more thing about areas I target, and then we'll round out the night with what our classes are going to be. So when you talk about what room you're going to VES in where you don't know where the people are, so we're just saying, hey, we need to VES the second floor, where do we want to VES? So I think it was 45% of civilian deaths were people that were asleep at the time of the fire. So unless your wife kicked you out of your bed, you're probably sleeping in the bedrooms, right? So we want to target, for the most part, we want to target bedrooms. The other reason, living rooms, kitchens, dens, things like that. The other reason we don't want to target those for VES, I'm not saying for search, I'm saying for VES, the reason we don't want to target those is a lot of times those don't have doors to be able to isolate ourselves. So we're completely defeating the purpose of VES. So bedrooms are the go-to for VES. So we're going to pick out those bedrooms. You generally, if you have a bedroom fire, that would not be the room that you want to target to VES, right? You want to target a room that's close to the fire. I generally go with close to the fire, but not on fire, right? if I don't have a line, I can't crawl up and crawl around in the fire. So I want to target a room. I guess I'll just put in a sentence. I want to target the room that is most likely to be occupied in the worst condition without being on fire, right? So I want the one where the people are clinging to life, can't survive another minute, and we need to get to them as soon as possible. I don't want them on fire because I'm going to be on fire, and that's not a survivable atmosphere. I'll go above the fire, but if you go above the fire, you just got to be careful with auto exposure. So I'll bring that up as an example. We would, like in, let me see, where is it? So let me find a quick one here to look at. So this is a good one. So let me pull this up. So this is, this is a garage fire, but it could all be the same. There may be a bedroom up here, and those people may be in a bad way, but obviously I can't throw a ladder up there, and I can't throw it over the fire. And even if I could, let's say if fire was just at a one window here, if I took a window above it, I'm giving the fire a very good auto exposure path to take. So, in these cases, I probably wouldn't want to go on the opposite side of the house because that's probably not a supremely dangerous area initially, but this window might be a good one. In the rear, this window might be a good one. So again, I'm going close to the fire without going in the fire. That's how I would describe where I want to VES for a unknown location life hazard. Bedrooms as close to the fire without going into the fire. Okay. So with that, I want to bring up, I'll bring up our VES flyer. So you guys should be able to see that. And so the VES goes along with our 40-foot container that we're doing a lot of fire behavior on. And the VES class is done in conjunction with Connecticut Custom Fire Training. So Flash Fire will provide the container, logistics, and all that. And CT Custom is going to provide the instruction. And we kind of combine a couple things into this class. We do, obviously it's based around VES, but we do combine some regular search and can confidence in it as well. And so it's a 24-person class. It can be done in either multiple evenings or a day. There's some classroom. And then what we do is we do 3 non-live fire stations. So as I said, we don't take anything for granted. So we go through a laddering and working off the ladder station. And what that's going to entail is we're going to have a window on top of the container. So you're going to throw the ladder to the window, practice taking out the window, just working with a tool on a 24-foot ladder. Okay. So we spend some time doing that with 8 guys. We do a basic VES drill, non-live fire, where we basically go through what I talked about, probing, taking the window, probing, sounding, and getting in the window and isolating, searching the hallway and isolating the door. We go through that. And then we go through a basic refresher of a primary search, searching beds, couches, all that jazz. Okay. So those 3 stations are about an hour each, 8 guys each, and then they rotate. So it takes, 2.5, 3 hours or so. And then that'll take us up to where we start setting shit on fire. Right. So we did this pictures from South Windsor, where we did a lot of our VES kind of test class this past fall. And we learned a lot, most of it good, but definitely some things that we needed to improve on, which we've been working on. And so basically, we're going to break up into 2 live fire groups. It's a 3-station afternoon rotation. 2 of them are involved in the live fire. One is the full-on VES. So what you're going to do is you're going to have the ladder, because we went over ladders earlier. And so everyone gets maximum time to VES. We have a cut down ladder there that's going to stay there. The member's going to get up there, vent the window, probe everything under live fire, go to the hallway, probe the hallway, close the door, all under live fire conditions. They're not going to have a can. Obviously, we'll have a safety line there, but they're doing it under live fire conditions. To give an example of where we were at about at 6 feet off the ground, we were at about 300 degrees, 3 to 350 degrees, and about 4 feet off the ground, we were at like rib smoking temperature. We were at about 200 degrees. All right. Maybe a little low for ribs, but about 200 degrees. And it was lights out conditions. It really worked out well. It was lights out conditions in there. You could not see your hand in front of your face. So you get in there, you do your search. there's a second member on the ladder. If you find a victim, you then remove that victim. What we did, which worked really well, was some groups didn't have a victim, right? Because I would say well over half the time you VES, and 90% of the time you guys do a primary search, it comes up complete and negative, right? So we don't just give you a victim because we say we're doing VES. So every group gets to do that. Once they exit, what we have built into the other part of the live fire part is what we call a floor above search. And so I call it a floor above search for a couple of reasons. Number one, we know that the way primary searches are taught is that your primary search generally begins once you find the fire, if you're searching for the fire, right? So if the truck goes in without a line, they're going to find the fire first and then start their search from that point. So that's one of the reasons we call it the floor above search, because we want you to start the search as soon as possible. The other reason we call it the floor above search is we know that it's going to take a line longer to get to the floor above than it is going to be the fire floor. And so that crew going to the floor above may very well be without a line, but we do want them to have a can with them, right? So they're going to start the search on the floor above, quote unquote, with that can, and they're going to enter, pulling up a better picture to kind of describe it. So they're going to enter the door here. This is the VES window. They're going to enter the door here, come in and do a search. And then when they get to this point here, which is about where the wall is, this is where your fire is. They're going to get to this wall and they're going to find that they have fire extension on the floor above. So then they're going to be tasked with giving a proper radio report. They're going to be tasked with trying to knock the fire back with the can. They're going to be tasked with controlling the door to the fire area and waiting for the line, right? So all of those things that probably don't do often, but may have to do, we're going to throw at them. And again, the VES crew is going to be outside at that point. For pictorial sake, this is obviously on a trailer now, so everything's going to be 3 feet further off the ground. And then once they do that floor above, they back out, and by then the next VES crew should be ready. The other reason I like to call it a floor above search is the VES crews entering this window, then they're crawling here to where the door is and starting their search from here, because this is essentially where the hallway is, and now they're going to search back towards this area. And so you've got crews that in the course of the day, yes, they are going to be searching the same room, but they're going to be searching it from opposite ends, because the floor above search starts here and goes this way, and the VES is going to start here and go this way. So although they're searching the same room, they're doing it from different ends. And so that should give a little bit different perspective, at least, so it's not just repeating the same thing over and over, right? So those are the 2 live fire stations. But because of the 24-person class, we have 1 other station available, and that's going to be a choice by the department. So depending on what you want to work on, and it could be something in addition to here, but it could be an engine op station where we will stretch a line and we will stretch it into the container. We won't really operate it into the container, but we will coordinate it with the groups so that you have it stretched and you enter it, you advance it into the container. We could do a 2-to-1 high point removal. So there's going to be that window above here for the ladder station in the first section I talked about, but we can use that as a 2-to-1 down firefighter as well. And then the final thing that we could do would be I call it a fortified window station. And that's 100% geared more towards if you're worried about fortified windows, window bars, window gates, child gates, things like that. A more rural suburban settings, probably not going to want to do something like that. And then by all means, if you have a forcible entry door already, we could do a forcible entry drill instead. So there's a lot of things that third station could be, large area search, drill. So a lot of things, but none of them are going to involve live fire just because we only have so much room in that container. So that's really the meat and potatoes, if you will, of what that VES class is going to entail. So that's the sales pitch on the VES side. So I'll leave it there. Does anyone have any questions? I've covered a lot without kind of asking if anyone has questions. I guess the most important thing is that I have a 5-year-old daughter, and she did paint my nails. I think she did a pretty good job. I don't know what you guys think, but I was told I had to show my nails if you're friends with me on Facebook, you already saw it. It's a lot. I'm less embarrassed by you guys than I would be if I didn't let her paint my nails. So I'm good with it. But yeah, that's the story. That's why I've painted fingernails. So it's a great icebreaker too. I did a couple sales calls today. Great icebreaker. So does anyone have any questions on either the VES class or anything we talked about tonight? I mean, I enjoyed it. I think it was good. The last thing I will mention is that we have, and I have a few spots left. If you want to see the container and everything we talked about tonight, this is for training officers only. Or, if the training officer can't make it and he has a lieutenant or whatever they wants to send, or a captain, then that's fine too. But this is going to be a free opportunity on Sunday, March 21st in Beacon Falls to be able to check out the container. And basically what's going to happen is you're going to come at 8:30. You're going to sit through the first part of the class. And then you'll go through one set of burns and we'll have you out of there by probably 11 or 12. So you're not going to go through the whole class, but you're going to get a good idea of how it runs, what it does, and things like that. So it should be a good time. If you're interested, just shoot me an email. And I'll get you in. I only have like 3 or 4, maybe 4 or 5 spots left. So I have some, but not a ton. And then my final thing, which I never do, but I am going to throw this out there tonight. I started in 2008 in engine 6.4, ladder 4.7, awesome firehouse. And so I've been out of there for 4 or 5 years now. But unfortunately, we lost a member in engine 64 last week in a snowmobile accident. It was actually a firehouse trip. And unfortunately, he succumbed to his injuries. And so they set up a scholarship fund for his kids for college. So if any of you guys want to contribute, I think there's going to be a GoFundMe coming out for the family too, so you could wait for that too. But this one definitely hits close to home. I didn't work with him, but obviously a lot of my best friends did, so they're devastated. And I know there's a lot of these going around, and I know it's a tough time, but I'll throw that out there. But that's pretty much what I have for the night. Honestly, it went a little longer than I had planned, but we're under 2 hours. I try to keep these under 2 hours. So for those of you that joined me for multiple ones this year, thank you very much. Definitely, again, put them on your calendar. They're going to happen in, late 2020, early 2021. We'll plan ahead. We'll do some more. I'll put out a survey probably in the next few months about topics you want. And I think standpipes is definitely going to be one that seems to be one that a lot of people seem to gravitate towards. So I have a couple of guys I'm going to reach out to do those with me. And without further ado, that's it, guys. So thank you very much. Any questions, you know how to reach me. And for a lot of you guys, I will see you in person for training soon. So thank you very much, guys. Have a good night.